Okay, let's call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the South Tahoe Public Utilities District Board of Directors. And if you'll all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to
the flag, United States of America, and to the republic,
one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay. Do we have an audience? Do we know? Or is it just us?
I think Brian's the only one who can see that.
14 people. We do have a member of the public.
Okay. So, do we have any comments from the audience? Okay, I'm hearing none. Do we have any corrections to the agenda or the consent calendar?
No.
Okay. I'm going to move adoption of the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
Okay, can you all hear me okay?
Pretty
Correct.
good. Pretty good.
We have a motion and a second. Vice President Sheehan?
Yes.
Director Cefalu?
Yes.
Director Ramzos?
Yes.
Director Peterson?
Yes.
Director Exline?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimous.
Okay. So the next thing is that we have I'm going to read a letter from MISAC, which, if you don't know what that stands for, is Municipal Information Systems Association of California. This was addressed to President Vogelsang. Congratulations to the South Tahoe Public Utility District for being selected as a recipient of the prestigious 2020 MISAC Excellence in Information Technology Practices Award. On behalf of the Municipal Information Systems Association of California, we are proud to recognize agencies for implementing information technology practices that excel in creative and efficient uses of local government resources. MISAC established the Excellence in Information Technology Practices Award in 2000 to recognize exemplary information technology practices. The award signifies that your agency met or exceeded MISAC standards in the technology-focused areas of budget and strategic planning, purchasing, operations and staffing, customer satisfaction, internet, project management, professional development and training, disaster preparation and recovery, policies and procedures, security, and GIS when applicable. As part of the process, the municipal IT professionals who reviewed the application will be providing your IT department with recommendations for further improvement. We are pleased to present this award to your district this year and look forward to doing so for many years to come. And it's signed by Brian Horn, the 2020 MISAC Awards Committee Chairman. So that is very good. And there's our little IT department right there. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So this is the sixth year that the IT department has actually received this award. And it's just another sign of the professionalism that we have within this department and the wonderful leadership skills of Chris Skelly, who is the manager of the department.
I think too, one of the things I'd like to highlight just for a second that's kind of remarkable in this time is just how important, I mean, IT was always important, of course, but how that was truly highlighted this year, brought to the forefront for so many of us, just how reliant we are now on a functioning IT department. And as always, STPUD excels, and this award is just another example of it. So congratulations to everyone, and thank you so much for your efforts.
I agree with that, and I'm leaning heavily on this department, so I really appreciate them.
Well, thanks. It's I think it was I thought it might have been eighth year for us, but it's definitely a department effort with all of us answering the questions and Judy helping us with the compiling of the responses. So thank you so much.
Yeah, just a great job, and keep it up. Congratulations.
Okay, let's move on to 7A, wastewater treatment plant and field stations condition assessment. Is Julie gonna do that for us?
Julie, if you're on mute, you may need to hit *6 to unmute yourself.
All right. Hold on, I'm getting a little bit of kickback because I'm listening through headphones. Let's try that. Is that better? Can you hear me? All right.
Yes.
I can hear you.
Good afternoon. So I am here today to talk to you about an upcoming condition assessment effort that we've got planned for both the wastewater treatment plant and for all of our field stations. So back in September, we went out with an RFP seeking consultants to help us with this effort. We've kind of had a backlog of condition assessment needs building up over the last several years. And we figured we would just roll everything into one and put out one solicitation to get the support, specialty support that we need. At the wastewater treatment plant, we have been working since about 2016 on assessing the remaining, particularly aging facilities at the wastewater treatment plant to help us make our plan forward for future capital improvements. But our focus has been largely on the mechanical components of the wastewater treatment plant. And so, you know, we have kind of a good handle on that just with our own staff resources. But what we don't have a particular specialty in on staff is the condition of the electrical systems, and then any structural deficiencies that some of the older buildings may have, and then the maze of underground piping that runs throughout our plant that's hard to see on a day-to-day basis. So this scope of work for the condition assessments at the wastewater treatment plant are focused really on those three areas. And then as for the field, we decided that we wanted to focus that effort again on the electrical components. That it is those major electrical systems at the field stations that could really be a driver for a major rehabilitation of a station. That the structural aspects of those stations are really simple enough, they're small enough structures, and that we would have a high enough tolerance for incidental damage during an earthquake. That we didn't want to spend a lot of money looking into the structural deficiencies of those stations. And then on the mechanical side, you know, we have a lot of expertise in-house that we felt comfortable making those assessments ourselves. And also, you know, on the mechanical front, we have a lot of redundancy at those stations so that if one pump or motor goes out, that we have backups for them. And so we can respond relatively quickly, as you all have seen over the last couple of years, as we've had, you know, 50-year-old pumps finally stop working and have to be replaced one at a time. So we said, okay, structural, mechanical out in the field, we're okay with that. But that left this big question of these major electrical equipment that, you know, if we have an electrical control panel, switch gear, motor control center, fail catastrophically on us, then the entire station goes down. And so we don't want to be surprised by those sorts of situations. And we thought it would help us planning in the future for what stations need our attention next. Over the last few years out in the field, we focused largely on the sewer, Big 5 sewer pump stations, but we've got 35 other sewer stations out there that a lot of them were built at about the same time. And so trying to figure out which ones really need our attention first. We're hoping that this effort will help us with that. So we've, like I said, we issued an RFP back in September. We went around about the RFP process a little bit differently because of COVID than we have in the past. You know, usually when we solicit RFPs, we allow consultants to come up and make individual appointments or talk to us, meet with all the staff. Well, we're really trying to minimize our exposure. But at the same time, we didn't want consultants proposing on this project without having seen the wastewater treatment plant, so that we could be comfortable that they had the background information that they needed to assess the work. So Jeff, Lee, and I conducted individual tours with each of the interested consultants. We started with 5 that we toured, and then 4 of those decided to proceed to providing a proposal, and we received 4 proposals in early November. We have a large team of staff that reviewed those proposals. I think there were 9 people on the review panel, and 6 of them actually reviewed every proposal and provided scores. And based on that deliberation, we were confident in making our selection of our consultant without any further interviews. And so we landed on Water Systems Consultants. It is a smaller firm that we have not worked with in the past as WSC, but the primary team members have worked with us on prior projects, including the clarifiers and aeration basins within the wastewater treatment plant in 15 and 16. They were with HDR at that time. So WSC is actually teaming with HDR on this project. And so we're really excited about the prospect of having a new firm to work with that's interested in our work and that we can develop a relationship with while still maintaining the deep bench that HDR provides. They're going to be doing primarily the electrical elements of this project. So with that, our intention is to break this project into 2 phases. And so the scope that we are presenting to you today for authorization will take us through the end of June. And it'll be focused on helping us prioritize the numerous field stations for further investigation, and then doing the same thing with the underground piping at the wastewater treatment plant. And then the second phase will come back in June or so to authorize work into the coming fiscal year, and that'll really focus on those field investigations and pulling together the final alternatives for evaluation and recommendations. The first phase of work, we're looking at roughly $160,000. The overall scope, if we can keep it within kind of the base scope, we're looking at around $480,000. So this is not an insubstantial effort and expenditure for the district. There are additional evaluations on top of that $480,000 that may be warranted, and we'll come back to you and ask for authorization for those if we find that we need them. And that would include further seismic evaluations beyond what is called a Tier 1 seismic evaluation. And it might also include utilizing some emerging technologies to help us get a better sense of the condition of those buried pipes within the wastewater treatment plant, that until we kind of wrap our heads around what is actually a viable technology and what might be useful to us, we can't really put a cost to it. Are there any questions?
Not a question, Julie, but I just want to let everybody know, the founder of WSC is a fellow by the name of Jeffrey Seitel, and he was a former partner in my business back in the 2007 era or so. He doesn't hold stock in the business anymore, and neither do I. So we were former business partners. I'm quite aware of him. I have a great deal of respect for him and the company that he has created in that startup. Also, I worked for HDR and was a stockholder in HDR years ago. So this is kind of an incestuous business. I do not have any stock in HDR, and I was not part of this selection process, but I would assure the board that that both of these firms are top flight, and I support the staff's recommendation.
Thank you. That's great to have that that feedback, because WSC really was largely unknown to us, other than
Okay,
Any other questions?
I guess I have a quick one. I'm just curious, in terms of the evaluation, does it include kind of an assessment of the, I guess, the capacity of one of those sites to accommodate additional resources? Like, let's say you want to increase the pumping capacity of one of your well sites, or might it anticipate maybe, you know, the placement of the solar system, and those kinds of, I guess, questions in terms of, you know, future accommodation for either increased capacity or the ability to take on new facilities like the solar system.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Shane. I think that is a topic that will be discussed when we talk about priorities, expandability, capacity of those electrical systems. Just recognizing we really are focusing solely on the electrical piece of it. And even within that electrical piece of it, like, we're not looking at motor condition assessment, because that kind of is coupled with the pump and can be replaced more easily. We're looking at that major switchgear. We're not really looking at the control systems, because generally you can swap out a control system while running a station in hand relatively easily, and so it wouldn't necessarily be a driver for a full station rehab. But yeah, capacity and honestly, obsolescence is a big consideration for these electrical systems. In some cases, we can't even get replacement parts for them anymore, and so the concept of expanding it is probably also not super realistic.
No, I was just going to add, this to some degree, it just seems a continuation of kind of our data gathering that we've been undertaking for, at least since I've been on the board the last several years, and before that as well. I don't think we have an option to kind of get to the bottom of this. Curious to see what's uncovered through the evaluation.
Yeah, you're right, Nick. And when we were looking at 0% rate increases this last year, we actually had a couple of other efforts of this kind, master planning kind of efforts on the table. This was the one that we decided it was not prudent for us to delay or postpone, despite those impacts to our available funding. And so that's why we moved forward with this year, is just because we do have this concern about, you know, what is the overall condition of our system out there, and where do we go next? Right. If there's no other questions, I can read my requested action.
Please do.
I'm asking that the board authorize staff to make minor modifications to the proposed scope of work from Water Systems Consultants to perform the wastewater treatment plant and field stations condition assessment, and to approve the revised scope of work, and to authorize the general manager to execute task order number 1 in the amount $159,645.
So moved.
I'll
I'll
second.
second.
Okay, we've got moved by Peterson, seconded by Sheehan. So that's a motion and a second on the floor. Vice President Sheehan,
Yes.
Director Cefalu, Director Cefalu, *6 to unmute if you're on mute, or the I guess the microphone icon. Okay, let's move on to Director Ramzos,
Yes.
Director Peterson,
Yes.
Director Exline.
Yes.
That motion passes with 4 votes.
Do we want to try to get Chris back on the line, or should we just move on?
Chris, can you hear us? Brian, can you tell if Chris is on the line still?
Chris is on the line, but he's muted.
Okay. So, and you can't unmute him, can you?
Let me, no.
Okay.
Yeah, it showed that I was muted by the organizer, and now it unmuted me, so that wasn't me.
Okay, how would you like to vote on the last item? Yes or no? The wastewater treatment plant and field stations condition assessment.
He's back muted again.
Melanie, this is Gary.
Hi, Gary.
To go off mute on your screen, it's not acting properly. So I've tried clicking on it and I can't. So I'm on my phone now,
Okay.
but that icon doesn't work very well.
Oh. It's working on my end, but we're clearly having some technical difficulties with it. Apologies for that. I'm sure Brian's working on it from behind the scenes. Chris, can you hear us, or are you able to unmute yourself?
Looks like it says I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Okay, how would you like to vote on the last item?
I vote yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimous.
Okay, now, excuse me, we are moving on to 7B, Department of Energy Connected Communities Grant, and that looks like it's you, John.
Yeah, thank you. Excited about this. We've been working with the city and others on the SEED MOU. That brought our current potential solar project forward, and Julie will have an update on that under staff reports a little later. But back to this item, it was a couple weeks ago, Directors Exline and Ramsos and Paul and I met with the city with Joe Irvin and new Councilman John Frederick. One of the items discussed was a grant opportunity, which is through the Department of Energy. It's called the Connected Communities Grant. And this could provide funding for renewable energy and energy efficiency projects for the district and our partners in this effort. So, you know, if you look at our capital improvement program, the district has a number of energy efficiency projects on the current 10-year plan. And these include the blower projects and a number of well station and other water system efficiency projects. So this is a source of potential funding. And of course, the current solar project, this could help with that. So we see this as an opportunity to help fund our projects as well as other community projects on the renewable energy and energy efficiency fronts. So at this point, I'm looking for approval from the board for the submittal of a concept paper only, which is essentially complete now, and it's attached to this action item. And we intend for this to be submitted by our local community partnership, and that includes the city, includes Lake Tahoe Community College, the school district, El Dorado County, Barton, and South Tahoe Refuse. So we would submit this together. And as for process, this is a concept paper only. It's intended to be submitted to the Department of Energy for consideration. And after their review for, I think, 30 to 60 days, they may then invite us to submit a full application. And so just to be clear, this is, we're applying for consideration at this stage. There's no continuing obligation to the district with this action. And I will bring this item back to the board for further action. Should hopefully we be invited to apply for the grant. So I think that's probably enough for me for now, unless there's additional questions or perhaps comments from the board.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, I think that this was a really kind of exciting effort that was brought forward as a result of the seed process. You know, I think what was really remarkable and unique about this exercise is that it was supported by, you know, essentially every local entity that uses energy on the South Shore. It really, for what we were doing, is if we're lucky enough to be afforded the grant, would really be a benefit to our efforts, because it's essentially a grant looking to fund what we're doing. And then, yeah, no, I think it's a tremendous opportunity, and I think it's a really positive thing if we're lucky to be afforded the grant. The one thing I would note is that one of the items that makes us unique to the grant process is kind of the nature of Tahoe, obviously, but then how that meets, you know, a mountain town looking to solve energy and fire infrastructure issues. And so kind of with all those pieces together, that's kind of the uniqueness being brought forward to this grant. And hopefully if we're selected, we'd be able to use those monies to achieve the objectives we've discussed for, you know, many years.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Can I just real quick, so in terms of submittal of this, is there any opportunity to maybe refine or to add a little bit more to the content of the concept paper?
I'll say yes, there's still an opportunity. I think the city was, they would like to get this out next week.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess, you know, when we met, we didn't really have STR on board, and I just want to confirm that, or I guess even El Dorado County, are we now, do we make those outreach efforts and get their kind of nod on this?
I've not been updated on that.
Yeah. And I guess one thing, if you can add anything, I think we talked a little bit about the potential for match, especially as it comes from STPUD. Probably be nice to kind of illustrate that in the paper, just so they know that we are coming to the table with some significant match.
Ability to match. I think this comes with a 30% match component.
Right. So if we can just, you know, highlight that in there, I think that'll give us a, you know, I guess a greater potential for the nod to go forward.
Okay.
Good point.
Any other comments, or would you like another day or so to provide comments to the city on this concept paper? Or is that the full nature of your comments?
The city is the lead on this thing, right? They're putting together the proposal and all that.
Yeah, they're putting this together, especially through their Councilman Friedrich.
So when it comes to the cost share, how is that apportioned between the cost sharing partners?
I guess those are details to be determined. I mean, at this stage, we're just trying to get get this to the Department of Energy for consideration for the full grant application. And I think, and as part of that full grant application, there's going to be some staff resources on the district side, and even perhaps third-party experts to complete the grant application. So at that point, I think we'll be able to better answer, what kind of a grant we're looking for. We'll know the match requirement, and then I think we can speak to how the match components potentially would be able to be met. At this stage, all I've looked at is, I can look to the district at what projects that I believe that we have that could qualify as matching costs that could be utilized for this grant. But again, that's me looking at our projects and trying to make that connection. That'll ultimately be up to the Department of Energy to determine. So I have a suite of district projects that I believe could be included in the grant, and some of that would include a match component from the district. I'm actually not aware of the details from any of the other partners in that regard at this stage.
Thank you.
Dave, yeah, the potential for match seems to be pretty considerable, as they get into the new rec site, and then I guess the other affordable housing project, and then whatever STPUD brings to the table and others. So I think we would probably be well in the realm of achieving the 30% match. And again, I just to clarify, this is just, bringing it in front of the DOE and asking them their thumbs up or thumbs down, should we move forward with it? It's not really any commitment at this point to STPUD resources.
So with that, if there's no more questions or comments, I will present the requested board action.
One question, John, real quick. So
yes.
Shane, were you considering going in there and revising the concept paper, or were you just addressing the comments there?
No, I think
I'm in favor of any kind of revisionary process that kind of make it as strong as possible. So I mean, if you have some suggestions, I would be highly supportive of kind of the introductions to those suggestions to make it as strong as possible.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm putting forward, is just maybe if we can highlight kind of that potential to match. I think that would bode well, just to kind of demonstrate that, we're not just throwing this out there, that there's some serious partnership going on here, and they're coming to the table with.
So with that, I have a question for Gary. I attached the concept paper to this agenda item. I would like the ability to make some edits to that based on director comments. Is that something we can accommodate in the requested board action, or perhaps do we need to?
Yeah, John, I think, yeah, that's something you can do. The board could approve the item as you laid out, but with the maybe additional language that it would be subject to additional comments, incorporation of additional comments from board members. And since this isn't a binding document that commits the district to anything in particular, I think that would be fine.
Okay, let me try this for requested board action. Authorize the district to join the city of South Lake Tahoe and other community partners in the submittal of a concept paper to the Department of Energy for a potential Connected Communities grant, and subject to edits to accommodate director comments.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Cephalou, a second from Xline. Vice President Sheehan?
Yes.
Director Cephalou?
Yes.
Director Ramzos?
Yes.
Director Peterson?
Yes.
Director Xline?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to 7C. I believe it's Melanie, election to elect a board president for the 2021 calendar year.
Yes, it is the time of year to elect a board president for the 2021 calendar year, and this is in accordance with Board Policy 2050-1. So the floor is open for nominations.
I'll make a, go ahead.
I was going to nominate Kelly for that office.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Excellent.
You got it.
Okay. So I'll take that as a motion by Cefalu, a second by Peterson to nominate Kelly Sheehan as board president for the 2021 calendar year. Vice President Sheehan?
Yes.
Director Cefalu?
Yes.
Director Ramzos?
Yes.
Director Peterson?
Yes.
Director Exline?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimous. And then on to item D, time to elect a vice president for the 2021 calendar year, again in accordance with Board Policy 2050-1, and the floor is open for nominations.
I would like to nominate Chris Cefalu as vice president.
Do we have a
I
second?
appreciate that, Kelly, but you know, I think a better suitable candidate for that office might be Dave.
Okay, do you want to nominate him?
I do.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Cefalu, a second by Sheehan, and President Sheehan,
Yes.
Director Cefalu,
Yes.
Director Ramzos,
Yes.
Director Peterson,
Yes.
Director Exline.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimous.
Congratulations.
Yes,
Okay.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on to payment of claims, and I am going to motion to approve payment of claims in the amount of $2,323,241.16.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. President Sheehan,
Yes.
Director Cefalu,
Yes.
Director Ramzos,
Yes.
Director Peterson,
Yes.
Director Exline.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimous.
Okay. That brings us to standing and ad hoc committee reports. And one thing that I would like to mention is that our operations committee next meeting will be on the 19th, which would be prior to official appointments to committees and whatnot. And so I'm wondering if perhaps Dave and Shane would like to attend that meeting.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. All right, great. And I have no further, does anybody else have any committee reports or ad hoc committee reports?
No, Madam President.
Okay. You're so funny. Okay, that brings us to board member reports, which I don't have anything. Does anybody else?
No, ma'am.
I don't, but I'm
No,
wishing
just
everybody a happy and healthy new year.
Yeah, just congratulations, Kelly. Very excited. Happy New Year to everybody. And I have to say, having done the virtual both ways, this way is preferable than the way we did it before. So this is much more enjoyable to see everybody. So yeah, so even if we have to exist virtually, this is going to be a good format. But you know, congratulations again, Kelly.
Thank you. Okay, El Dorado Water Agency. I'm assuming that we'll have a meeting in January. I have not heard otherwise, so that would. But
Scheduled for next Wednesday.
Yeah, yeah. And like I said, I haven't heard otherwise. I haven't received an agenda yet either. So. And then Dave, maybe you might want to participate in that if we do have a meeting. It'll be done remotely, of course.
Sure, yeah, if, John, if you could send me the invite on that, that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, we should have that by tomorrow.
All right. That brings us to John, General Manager report.
Okay, thank you. Got a few items here. We'll start out as usual with the staffing update. There's a lot going on out there. Really a record number of recruitments here at the district taking place, impacting a total of 8 positions. So I'll just do a quick rundown. Starting with lab technician, we reviewed 63 applications and interviewed 6. And we selected Kevin Uribe Herrera, who is our current lab assistant, and he's doing a great job for us here in that position. So we welcome him to the lab tech position. We have a total of 4 positions to be filled in underground repair water, pumps, and a couple out at DVR. The advertisement periods have closed for those positions, and we're reviewing a total of 73 applications for upcoming interviews over the next few weeks. So a lot of interest out there. And also in pumps, for pump station supervisor, we held interviews for 2 in-house candidates and selected Mike Cheffo, who's been doing impressive work out there on the crew and has nearly 15 years experience at the district. So I think that's a great selection. And as I mentioned last time, our accounting supervisor is retiring, and we are advertising for that position, and that advertisement extends through this Friday. And we're advertising for an HR analyst until January 17th. And here we're looking to bring the HR department back to full strength after more than a year with just Liz holding the fort down. So thanks for that, Liz. So we've been really busy on recruitments and making up for some lost time. For the new board members, if you're not aware, we delayed a number of recruitments last year due to our economic concerns due to COVID, of course. But you know, looking at all the interest, it really is great to see so much interest in district positions out there these days. We're holding interviews virtually, and it's really working out very well. So thanks again to IT, our award-winning IT department, for that assistance. So how about a COVID-19 update? I passed on Shelley's notes from our Tuesday call with Barton. I sent that out to the board, I think, yesterday. Generally, we're seeing increasing cases in California and Nevada in December. Locally, you know, per Barton, they saw more stability and even some declines in December prior to Christmas, but now some spikes after the holidays, Christmas and New Year's. So we expected that. As of Tuesday, there were 7 COVID patients in the hospital, 2 in the ICU, and with the Barton staff itself, Barton has administered the Pfizer vaccine to about 600 of their employees. So that's about 60 to 70% of their staff. And out of the 600, there's just 1 or 2 minor kind of side effects related to those vaccines. So really optimistic for that. The county has set up vaccination clinics, and they're currently vaccinating the Tier 1A folks, the medical personnel and nursing home residents. Next, coming up in maybe later this month, would be Tier 1B, and those include educators, daycare providers, and at-risk folks and elderly folks. And then comes Tier 1C, and this would include our staff, water and wastewater workers. And you know, from what we see today from the county and Barton, we think that's likely to start up those vaccinations the end of February, maybe early March. So we are working with the county for sure. We're looking to obtain some priority for district workers to receive testing in kind of a more expedited fashion, and as well as, you know, get in line for that vaccine as part of the 1C tier when that is offered. And we're pulling our staff next week to determine how much of our own staff actually want to get the vaccine once it's offered. So I think back at the district, it's looking good, really. There no sickness, and we have just 2 employees that are out right now as a precaution due to some potential exposure through a family member. So there's really, I think our protocols and our risk plan have really helped keep us healthy here for sure. So it's working. We continue to operate at risk level 3, and that includes the higher levels of remote working, limits to those in-person meetings, and out in the field, those 12-hour shifts, and the front office remains closed. Earlier today, I sent the board some information on our water and sewer flows. So I think some real interesting information. Looking at those graphs, our water services are in strong demand, even with the shutdowns. If we look at December water production year after year, we looked at a 10-year history. Water use was up 8% this past December as compared to last year. And this was slightly above our 10-year trend, and actually was our highest number since 2013, this past December. So averaging just over 4 MGD, which is about 2,800 gallons per minute on average throughout the entire month. So good demand on the water side. The sewer flows are down, but I think that's likely due to low precipitation, lower groundwater levels, less infiltration and inflow into our sewer system as a result. So, and then I also sent the board some information from the city. This is up to date as of last September. They complete quarterly reports and bring that to their city council. So looking at that data, the city collected about $2 million in TOT, tenant occupancy taxes, this past September. This is actually the highest ever for any September. And if you look at kind of year-to-date numbers, they're down about 15 to 20% year-to-date as compared to recent years. And then looking at sales tax in December, it was also very strong, the second highest on record, just after September of last year. And the year-to-date numbers for sales tax are right on par with recent years. So I think that's looking very strong for the city and the community. And again, the backup information was provided on that email to the board earlier today. Tahoe Keys Water. So last week, I sent the board an email in regards to the challenges the Tahoe Keys is having with their detection of elevated uranium levels in 2 of their 3 wells. And of course, as the board is aware, there is also PCE troubles in that area with their wells. The district, we have a meeting scheduled next Tuesday with Tahoe Keys Water to learn more about their issues and perhaps begin discussion on potential solutions and what part the district could play in those efforts. So I'll keep the board certainly updated on that. And in some anticipation of that meeting next Tuesday, our engineering department has been working with our water distribution system model to look at our system capabilities and limitations in providing assistance both short and long term potentially. So, and we have an 8-inch intertie with the Tahoe Keys. It's located down Tahoe Keys Boulevard near Michael Drive. And I'll be meeting with our engineers tomorrow to discuss the details of our capabilities. So last item I have 2021 goals, and these are actually goals that the board sets up for me. And I guess as a reference, later on in this agenda, we have a closed session item coming up in regards to an evaluation of the progress on my goals from last year, 2020. And so you can take a look at that as a reference. And so for 2021, I've started working on the development of a new set of goals. My thought is to begin by forwarding my draft set of 21 goals to each of you by next Wednesday. And then each of you can provide comments, suggest additional or different goals. And then I'll consolidate our ideas and bring this back to our next board meeting on January 21st for discussion with the full board again, and then we can just go from there. So just those are my thoughts on setting up the 2021 goals. Does that sound like a good plan from the board's perspective?
Yeah,
Sure.
so.
Okay. Look for my email by next Wednesday, and we'll start from there. And that's all I have for today, Kelly.
Okay.
Can I ask a question for you, John, real quick?
Sure.
I know that the quarter ended with the COVID rate relief. I wonder if you have any update for that, and if you think we're going to continue that, or should we discontinue that?
Yeah, we do have, we can give you a little update on that. Paul, do you want to provide that? Do you have those numbers by chance?
Is Tim on the line?
I am. I have those numbers.
Great.
Okay.
Sure. For the second round of the COVID rate relief, that, like you said, ended on December the 31st, we had 547 applications that totaled around $99,262. Of course, you know, with this round, we had some stipulations. It was like a 50% discount for sewer charges for residential and multifamily classes, and then on commercial accounts, it was a discount with a maximum up to $3,000. As far as continuing it, we are still getting phone calls. Phone calls that we're mostly getting now are, you know, since Tahoe is still in a stay-at-home order, a lot of these people that are calling are businesses and customers that, you know, can't go back to their job because obviously it's not open yet. So I don't know. I'll leave that up to Paul or John on if we want to continue this or not.
Just real quick, just to add some additional information. So that dollar amount that Tim stated, the 100 grand, that's about at the 60% level of the first go around, which was around 180, if I remember. So we're at about 280,000 in total on the relief program, and about 260,000 on the waiver of the late fees. So we're at about $540,000 in total for COVID relief at this time.
Yeah, I had a few ideas looking at the numbers that John had provided prior to the meeting, that, you know, clearly we see people using water and sewer, and, you know, looking at their, you know, essentially the city receipts, you also see the economy doing reasonably well. But as, you know, Dwayne would, you know, continually point out during these meetings, there is a group of people that is suffering. And so maybe instead of looking at it as COVID relief, and I'm just kind of putting this idea out there now, and especially as we get into the 218 process this year, is how can we kind of manage the need to continue to raise rates with kind of the people that will perpetually struggle here in the economy. So I don't really have an answer for that, but more looking at developing a program to address the need of the, you know, the select few that are going to continually need it, opposed to kind of this, you know, more broad COVID relief package that we have now. If you see where I'm going with this idea.
Yeah, because the way it was initially set up, you know, the application process was absolutely as simple as could be, and it required no proof or documentation at all to illustrate the need. So maybe we could strengthen up that area so the relief was truly going to the people that genuinely need it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's hard to say need. I guess what as well is that this problem is going to exist, you could argue, for a very long time. Based on kind of the COVID realities meets economic realities, there's going to be a subset of people that always historically existed that is going to be underserved economically. And so the question is, what are we going to do with that subgroup of people? Is kind of the mechanisms we're dealing with COVID the best way to treat that? Or as we go in the 218 process, because there's some people in this economy doing really well, do we look to, you know, create a different kind of mechanism to serve those folks while understanding that some businesses are doing well and we still have, you know, financial obligations and things we're going to have to do as a district? So real kind of just a reevaluation of how we can, you know, continue to meet our financial and rehabilitation obligations and address those folks that are going to be, you know, they're going to be in a tough economic situation for the foreseeable future.
One thing I think we could do, we could take a look at the individuals that have been receiving the rate relief and compare that to the list of individuals who are part of what we call our ongoing customer care program, which are the ones that receive the 25% discount, as long as they can illustrate they're in that same program with Liberty, and see what the crossover is. And maybe we could talk about possibly increasing that percent discount to that care group, because that's an ongoing program.
How many people are in the care group? It's a very small number, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I don't know if you have that number, Tim, but for some reason I always thought it was somewhere between 300 and 400.
It's right at 300, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Well, and at some level, I think to your point, Paul, that when we began this process, especially kind of with the application process, we knew people were, at some level, we didn't know what was happening in our world. We wanted to make people feel comfortable and to provide assurances and as few roadblocks to helping folks out as possible, right? But at some point, if this is going to be kind of an ongoing process with, a group of people, we're going to have to manage that better than we would be with the system as it's set up currently. I don't, and to be quite honest, sitting here right now, I don't have the perfect metric for how to do that. But it was just as I was reading John's numbers today, or the number John provided today, you start to see kind of the tale of two economies, and how do you address that in Tahoe? I mean, similarly, we have the unique challenge of how do we fixed costs versus usage costs, and it's unique about Tahoe. So in some ways, this is also unique about Tahoe, and so how do we want to address this in the long term and manage it more effectively?
And I'll agree. The thing about it is, if you're not an essential business, then the people that we're talking to is the people that can't go to work. They want to go to work, they really do, but they can't go to work, and so they're the ones that are asking for the relief. So I don't know how long this stay-at-home order is going to last. We were hoping that it was going to be lifted after New Year's, but it's still in place. And, my crystal ball just doesn't show, how much longer that's going to be.
Well, here's the thing. Originally, I think we had allocated $500,000 or $600,000 for that program in the first round, with a second round possible. We haven't actually used it. And my original reason for asking the question was more just to find out if, as a board, we want to continue it or discontinue it. I didn't mean to open up a whole series of questions on the manipulation of our variables to use to decide who gets it and who doesn't. It was more about, are we going to continue it for another quarter or not? And the late fees, I mean, to be honest, Paul, they're two apples and oranges, right? I mean, I know there's still money coming out of the pot, but the fact is that's an artificial revenue source in some ways. And so I think my simplest way to put this is, do we want to continue that or do we want to not continue it? And I think that's a board decision.
Yeah, I would suggest.
Yeah, I would be supportive. Oh, sorry, John. I was going to just say I'm supportive of continuing it for a quarter. And I would say kind of, the recent points I made are not really kind of something to be decided today, but more just kind of long range thinking, especially as we get into kind of, again, that 218 process. It's going to become, something we're going to have to address. So just kind of putting that idea out there now so we can start thinking about, what we're going to want to do.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree, Nick. I don't think this is some long-term solution to a problem that could persist. However, if we continued it for another quarter, I mean, my thinking is that would be the end of it, but that's just the way I'm thinking right now. And if you guys decide that you don't want to continue it, then we'll decide that as a five-sum.
Mm-hmm. I agree, and I think maybe one more quarter. I don't know if we want to, like Nick brought up, certain factions, myself included. My business is closed indefinitely, and I don't foresee it opening anytime soon. And I do have a group of employees who really want to come back to work. They're anxious, but I think our ICU capacity for the greater Sacramento region is like 11-1. So the last time I spoke with my employees as a group, I said, I don't think we'll be back to work until February at the earliest.
Just as a reminder, the allocation for the overall program was generated through cost cuts, and it was actually about 1.1 million. So we've used about half of it at this point.
Thanks for that, Paul. I couldn't remember.
Sure.
I think
And just as another reminder, the next round of bills go out next week, I believe, but the payments for those bills aren't due for 90 days. So we do have a little more time to think about this, and yeah, there's not a rush to approve it for another quarter at this time.
Yeah, and maybe Tim, you could come up with some ideas if you want it to just remain as it is. Very little, basically you just check a box and we're done. Or if you think we should maybe implement some additional documentation.
Sure. I'll see what I can come up with, Kelly.
Yeah, so we'll plan on bringing that forward at the next meeting.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say real quick, I think it would be fair to assume that, the next round would probably generate a similar or even less level if it continues going down like the downward trend.
Well, the one thing that you got to remember is we closed, then we opened, and then we closed, and now we're in that third round of close. And like Kelly said, we don't know how long that's going to last. I mean, we have 15 ICU beds, or whatever you want to call it. So technically, that could go on indefinitely. I mean, I don't think so, but.
So
it wouldn't surprise me if it goes into this first quarter as well as the second.
The
Safe to
question
say.
for you, the last meeting or the meeting before, we considered an exception for a ready mix company, basically put them on standby mode and cut them a break on their water bill. I'm wondering if that kind of an arrangement is something that we might want to think of for businesses that are out, that are basically in standby mode. If we could do that for others, does that make sense? And as a way to continue this on.
That's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a question that we would have to get some legal response to, basically because we're treating customer classes differently. Unlike the ready mix, which it was a very unique situation where the customer couldn't actually use our services for a period of time in the winter. And so that would be something I want to forward to Gary.
Yeah, I think you're probably right on point, Paul, but yeah, maybe we could take a look at, if I could have a little more specifics on what you're thinking, I can take a look at it with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that update.
Yeah, so I think we'll bring it back as an action item for discussion on the 21st and provide some of this additional information as requested.
Okay. Thank you, John. So I think we're going to hear from Julie again. Solar project update.
Bueller?
Are you there? Can you hear me? Okay, great. So we had originally hoped that we would have a presentation for you today with a more substantive update on this project, but the holidays happened, and I think we were a little bit optimistic about how far along we would be. So when I spoke with Denver this morning, and I think he actually might be out there on the line following along, but he indicated that he was still waiting to hear back from the financiers on some updated numbers, and didn't really have much update for us on the question of whether battery storage accompanying a solar array was starting to look viable. So I think for that part of it, and maybe something a little bit more formal, we will come back to the next board meeting, but that's not to say we haven't been making any progress. So a couple of things just to keep you up to speed on. I had, as of last time, sent along to ProStar the power consumption data that we've been collecting at the plant on kind of a short interval time span, 15-minute increments, since last February, so that they could analyze, what kind of system size would we be looking at if we wanted to instantaneously consume all the power generated by the solar array at the wastewater treatment plant, effectively avoiding having to send any excess power onto the grid for use by Liberty, because that has been one of their major concerns, is that any excess power from our solar array is really of little value to them. So he came back to me with some numbers, and we're looking at what would be a 1.8 megawatt AC system. So in solar terms, that's a 2.6 megawatt DC system. So that's how the array would be sized, but we would get 1.8 megawatts AC power out of that. So that was something we were waiting for. So that's definitely larger than that 1 megawatt system that we had been talking about. That was kind of the Liberty net metering cap. But if we can use it all on site, then that helps the situation with Liberty. So on the Liberty front, we did attempt to have another follow-up meeting with Liberty with limited success. Jennifer Gunther, our client services rep, did join us on the line, but we didn't get a whole lot of questions answered. One takeaway that I had from that meeting was that she was recommending that they get in their Rule 21 application for the connection to the system, and that would kind of formally open up the dialogue of conversation for information going back and forth. So I don't have a whole lot more on that unless Denver has something to add. And then another piece of the puzzle, Paul has been working with a consultant, Jeff Inga, who represents the A3 group. That's basically the group of large commercial power consumers within the South Shore region, on responding to Liberty's proposed rate increases with the PUC. The most recent rate increase proposal from Liberty is pretty substantial. And John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we said kind of our overall bill was expected to go up something like 27% over the course of the next few years.
27% overall, and really Liberty wants that to happen immediately. And we're with Jeff and our other partners to at least try to delay that, spread that over 2, 3, or 4 years. But it seems imminent that that type of rate increase will occur in the short term.
Apparently, there has been some kind of backup of rate increase approvals at the PUC, and this is kind of the compounded impact of that. And so, the numbers that we've been using so far on this solar array comparison, they weren't necessarily representative of what Liberty wanted the rates to be right now or what they might be in the future. So it definitely changes that financial picture if they get implemented.
I mean, what percentage were we talking about, Julie, with those numbers? I mean, we were talking what, like 3% annual increase or something?
3 to 5
I
was
thought
the
those
range
numbers.
that I looked at.
Yeah, I mean, and we got to be really honest about the Liberty system here, and kind of, you know, look at it as it relates to our own. They have significant cost liabilities into their future, coupled with fire risk, all these other things that are coming to them. Their costs are going to continue to escalate much further and faster than you know, our consultants, or rather the solar provider had anticipated, because he had to be conservative in his estimates. And so you look at that meets kind of the cost we're getting for solar, the redundancy options, specifically with our ability to get battery storage now. You know, it becomes a question of, are we going to continue to pay these rates into the future? Or are we going to use this as an opportunity now to take advantage of our own energy, you know, destiny, and allow ourselves to become renewable meets redundant with our system, so that we can continue to pump water and sewer in the event of a fire?
Yeah, and so, you know, I think there's definitely work that we need to do on the financial analysis, so one thing that we've proceeded with is talking to Jeff Inga, the consultant, about joining us on the team evaluating the solar array, so kind of expanding his role with us beyond just representing that A3 commercial large power users group. So anyway, we're working with him and getting a master services agreement set up and a task order. You know, he has much more extensive familiarity with Liberty and the California PUC than the HDR consultant that we had been working with out of the Dakotas, Nebraska. So I think there actually is value at having both those people on our team, because based on Gretchen's locale in Nebraska, she has more familiarity, I think, with ProStar on a regional basis, and you know, has been useful from that front. So anyway, we hope that he can shed some more light on the detailed financial evaluation, since he knows kind of the rate future so well. Beyond that, we have also made progress on the review of the PPA agreement that we had received the draft from Core and ProStar, and provided comments back to them. There was a conference call the other day, and you know, we had provided along with the city and the rest of the seed fund group, had provided consolidated comments back, a long list of them, and kind of the long and short of the follow-up discussion with Core and ProStar was that, yes, the initial draft that they had sent us was basically their standard agreement. Yes, they were now aware that it did not meet the terms of the PPA as had been set out in the RFP, and that really their exceptions to our comments boiled down to just a few key areas for further discussion. And so Gary was on that call. Gary, is there any more detail that you want to give to the points that were of most concern?
Yeah, they indicated when we started out the conversation with, you know, they had reviewed our comments, and those comments came from Optimy, the consultant to Seed Fund, and from the city and from the district. And so they were all consolidated into one document, and they really only had, they said, as Julie pointed out, they recognized that there were a number of things that needed to change, and they really, at least verbally, indicated that they did not have significant problems with almost all of them. In fact, they said there were only three areas that they wanted to get clarification on that were important to them. I think in the call, when walking through them, I think we kind of agreed that probably those weren't a significant issue. We're going to wait and see what they come back with on the next draft, which we expect to have in a week or so. What they're going to do is take the most recent one, put their revisions in red line for us, and then I anticipate that we'll go through it with district staff, and then I think we're going to assemble our common team with Optany and the city at least to combine any further comments to their red line draft, and then Optany is right now then going to try to schedule another call with Core, ProStar, and their Standard Solar, who's their financier, probably in about 2 weeks. And so that's the next turnaround on the PPA. I think you covered pretty much everything else, Julie.
Yeah, I think so. Are there any other questions out there?
Just curious with the PPA, what role do you want the board to play in the review of that?
I think to a large extent, I think it's going to be the financial end that we will certainly, when we get things further along, we can provide more detail to the board on the agreement itself. But it's really, given the current status of it, it's really premature to do that at this point. I think the largest, most important aspect is going to be the financial side and reporting that to the board so you understand not only the finances of the PPA, but also what our discussions and connection agreements going to be with Liberty, because that will impact what the district expects to save. This is where I think, when Jill and I talked the other day after discussing with John, the consultant that she just described, he has, really good integral knowledge of Liberty, and everything, and I'll just say everything Liberty, how they run, how they operate, their costs, the rules. And so he's going to be very helpful in that aspect of negotiating with Liberty, because there's things they have to do, and there's things they want to do, and they're going to want us to only do what they want, as opposed to having someone basically almost on the inside be able to tell us what we can demand of them, or what we can negotiate with them. Will be real helpful, because that's going to impact that connection agreement, and any fees or costs from Liberty is obviously going to impact the financial analysis and how much the district is going to save on the solar project itself. So I think that's where the more lot of work for the board to consider in the future, Chris, that to make sure you're comfortable with what's being proposed, and for the future.
And do we have a tentative timeline when we might see some of those things start to develop?
I think
it's rather say come closer to completion.
I think the PPA, even at this point, won't have the financial information in it. We're going to be putting together some of the major terms in it, but and it's really kind of right now, as Julie said, the ball's in Core's ballpark right now to develop their next proposal based on information that Julie and the district has provided them, based on information from their financiers, and as to what kind of system they can propose that will work for the district, and that may involve more also on what sort of operations the district also might adjust to make most utilization of power generated during daylight hours. And Julie and I have talked about this with John, is that, rather than pumping a significant amount of effluent at night, which you do now to get the lowest rates, you could flip that and pump during the day when the solar is producing the most. And so there may be ways to take a look at that would maybe allow the system to be designed as large as possible, but not putting any power back to the grid. But that's something also I think we want to explore with the consultant, is what we can negotiate with Liberty to, is there any way that we can require them to take power back to the grid, and then what price that would generate for the district to offset other costs. So I think there's still a lot of work. We're still not anywhere near be able to provide what I think would be close to any sort of financial model on what this is going to look like, despite what was presented in Core's initial proposal. I think there's still yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I see this still all as a very positive kind of evolution of this process. You kind of, like all projects, you see the initial numbers, and this all evolves. And it's really uncovered a lot of various different things about our relationship with Liberty and the like. So did we notify the consultant about the rate increases that John had referenced? So they're going to be incorporating those in the updated financials?
I think the consultant actually notified us of those, right?
That's correct.
Yeah,
because he's working on, as Julie said, he's working on for the district and other customers for this A3 group. So that's how he's aware of this.
Yeah, but you're talking about, when you say consultant, you mean the solar consultant. I think that's what Nick's talking about.
I thought he was talking about Jeff.
I thought he was.
No, the solar consultant, the gentleman, because that drop. If you started a 5% or 3 to 5% annual increase today,
oh, right.
But then you bump that 42%, like that's a dramatic difference in your numbers. I mean, dramatic, as you start to think about some compounding numbers. So I want to make sure that they're incorporating the rate increases that Liberty has just provided us with.
Well, and Denver, at least as of a minute ago, was on the line. I'm wondering if Brian can allow him to unmute, and maybe he can speak to next steps. And I'm not positive. I know that I hadn't told him that this had come down the line. We hadn't had an opportunity to speak about that yet, so it might be a total surprise.
No, I don't think it's. Oh yeah, and I don't think it's that stressful. Just something to make sure that they're informed of as soon as possible, so that they're all future movement is incorporating in those known changes.
Yeah, I think it's a little premature for them to actually plug those in, because as of now, the proposed rate increases from Liberty are proposed. They're being considered by the CPUC, and until they issue their final ruling, we won't know how they're actually going to be implemented.
Right, but we still have to consider I would put this like, this is going before the CPUC. There's the likelihood is these charges will be put upon us, and so it behooves us to evaluate it as if it is. We could do a subsequent analysis, not including this, or just the standard rate increase. But I think we have to operate on some level of assumption that this rate increase at this volume is going to hit us relatively quickly.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And to Julie, I think the last proposals we got from CORE included a range. You said 3 to 5%. So it seems like they can run another scenario or two that contemplates some of these proposed rate increases.
Right.
Yeah, but there's a number of moving parts. You know, we've got the rate increases that I agree they're going to go into effect at some point over some period of time. But we also we need CORE to firm up what they're going to propose, so we know what the solar array looks like and what it's going to produce. And then we need to get the other variable is Liberty costs. What's that? How's that going to impact that? Because they're not going to be able to. For the times when the district's not taking power from Liberty, there will be continuing costs from Liberty related to maintaining its system, and when that call those, at least Liberty calls them non-bypass charges. So I think there's a number of moving parts that we need to get our handle on before putting together another financial projection. But certainly it appears now with the information that we've got that the projection of 3 to 5 is probably pretty conservative, and whatever is going to if that looks good, we probably are going to do much better than that, given what we've heard the other day from the consultant as to what Liberty proposed rate increases look like. But I think once we get to that point, I think we can roll all those things together to kind of get a better financial picture for the board.
Ryan, were you successful at unmuting Denver?
He has to unmute himself. I can send him a request to unmute.
Okay.
Oh, I think it works. Hey guys, can you hear me? Nice. Hello everyone. Good job. No, I think we're directly in line. Obviously, just like Julie had stated, we weren't able to get necessarily all the information that we wanted from Liberty, but it was very clear that they were not interested in any of our overproduction. So that's the reason why we kind of sized that system alternatively to not overproduce based on that 15-minute interval level data that was shared. I do think that moving the production to the daytime is obviously going to help a ton, because we can avoid any of that cost of power. And then obviously avoid those rate increases. I did not know that it was going to be that dramatic. It does not surprise me that they are going out percentages like that, just because of a lot of the reasons you stated, the older infrastructure and the fire risk. But from our side, I tend to agree with Gary as well. I do think that having an understanding of the definition or finalized definition of bypass charges is something that we were looking for a little bit more clarity on, that Ms. Jennifer wasn't able to help us with. But I am expecting to have pricing on the system as far as from a PPA aspect with our options that we were looking at with the escalation and without. I'm expecting to have that by next week, and was hopefully in our efforts to be able to put something together, at least high level for the next meeting, can understand if we want to wait and make sure that we've got all of the information before we do that. Concurrently at the same time, kind of running the parallel route, Julie mentioned it earlier about the Rule 21 application. That is the immediate form of engagement with Liberty. So I do feel like it would make a lot of sense that if we're all kind of under the same understanding of the 2.6 megawatt system, that once we kind of we're in agreement with the economics that are around those systems, that we can start that application process. It's very easy for us once we get into the system to either amend that application and or have a measuring, i.e. if we were looking at a microgridded type of system, which we're also pursuing in a parallel pursuit while we're doing this as well. So I just think that kind of is one of our next steps once we very comfortable with the economics, is to start that Rule 21 application, which gets us to the interconnection agreement, just like Gary stated, is very important for us to understand, because that will be the government agreement between the district and the utility. So that document is obviously very vital.
Any other questions or comments?
So Denver, do you think it is premature to say that we'll be back on the 21st with another update and more information, or do we want to give it till the first board meeting in February to give you some more time? But how do things look like they're going to play out?
Yeah, no, I mean, from a pricing and from a microgrid feasibility standpoint, I do feel like the 21st would be ample time. The one unknown that we do still obviously have is that question to Liberty as far as, you know, when we are going to be taking power from them, exactly what rate schedule we're going to be on, making sure that that is not, you know, affecting anything negatively. Those are the only things that I can't help, because as you know, we've been trying to get the information that we wanted from quite some time and haven't necessarily been all successful. But as far as everything on our end, I do feel comfortable with the 21st being able to provide the 2 updates, at least from the system size and production standpoint, which is some of the stuff that I shared this morning, but also how those affect the PPA economics, as well as our microgrid pursuit for the larger system. I feel comfortable in being able to provide all of those updates.
Great. Thanks for chiming in.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's all we've got, if there's no more questions.
Okay. So then you see the past and future meetings. Now we're going to go into closed session. Okay, so we're all here, and we're coming out into open session with nothing to report. And we'll move on to item 15A.
Say, Kelly.
Yes.
There was one report, wasn't there? Mobley.
No, there's no report. There's no action taken on the Mobley claim in closed session. That's what we're going to do now.
Right. I just thought that we would did 15A.
So John, are you going to take the lead then on that?
No, he's muted.
I didn't think of that. Like, help, I'm being held hostage by the internet.
Okay. I think I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I can hear two of you.
Okay. We're back for 15A. Mobley claim for damages. And the district has received a claim for damages related to the accident on the Verizon construction site. Staff recommends that the district reject the claim since the accident occurred on a portion of the district's property that is leased to Verizon, with Verizon having complete control over all activities. So the requested board action is to reject the Mobley claim for damages and direct staff to send a written rejection notice to the claimants.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second on the floor. President Sheehan?
Yes.
Director Cefalu?
Yes.
Director Ramos?
Yes.
Director Peterson?
Yes.
Director Exline?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys, I think that's it. I think we can adjourn this meeting. I think it went really well. Good job, IT, getting this all, Brian, getting this all together for us.